The treasure in the forest. The canoe was now approaching the land. The bay opened out, and a gap in the white surf of the reef marked where the little river ran out to the sea. The thicker and deeper green of the virgin forest showed its course down the distant hill slope. The forest here came close to the beach. Far beyond, dim and almost cloud like in texture, rose the mountains like suddenly frozen waves. The sea was still save for an almost imperceptible swell. The sky blazed. The man with the carved paddle stopped. "It should be somewhere here," he said. He shipped the paddle and held his arms out straight before him. The other man had been in the fore part of the canoe, closely scrutinizing the land. He had a sheet of yellow paper on his knee. "Come and look at this, Evans," he said. Both men spoke in low tones, and their lips were hard and dry. The man called Evans came swaying along the canoe until he could look over his companion's shoulder. The paper had the appearance of rough map. By much folding it was creased and worn to the pitch of separation, and the second man held the discolored fragments together where they had parted. On it one could dimly make out, in almost obliterated pencil, the outline of the bay. "Here," said Evans, "is the reef, and here is the gap." He ran his thumbnail over the chart. "This curved and twisting line is the river. I could do with a drink now. And this star is the place." "You see this dotted line?" said the man with the map. "It is a straight line and runs from the opening of the reef to a clump of palm trees. The star comes just where it cuts the river. We must mark the place as we go into the lagoon." "It's queer," said Evans after a pause, "what these little marks down here are for. It looks like the plan of a house or something. But what all these little dashes pointing this way and that may mean I can't get a notion. And what's the writing?" "Chinese," said the man with the map. "Of course. He was a Chinese," said Evans. "They all were," said the man with the map. They both sat for some minutes staring at the land while the canoe drifted slowly. Then Evans looked towards the paddle. "Your turn with the paddle now, Hooker," said he, and his companion quietly folded up his map, put it in his pocket, passed Evans carefully, and began to paddle. His movements were languid, like those of a man whose strength was nearly exhausted. Evans sat with his eyes half closed, watching the frothy breakwater of the coral creep nearer and nearer. The sky was like a furnace, for the sun was near the zenith. Though they were so near the treasure, he did not feel the exaltation he had anticipated. The intense excitement of the struggle for the plan, and the long night voyage from the mainland in the unprovisioned canoe had, to use his own expression, taken it out over him. He tried to arouse himself by directing his mind to the ingots the Chinaman had spoken of, but it would not rest there. It came back headlong to the thought of sweet water rippling in the river, and to the almost unendurable dryness of his lips and throat. The rhythmic wash of the sea upon the reef was becoming audible now, and it had a pleasant sound in his ears. The water washed along the side of the canoe, and the paddle dripped between each stroke. Presently, he began to doze. He was still dimly conscious of the island, but a queer dream texture interwove with his sensations. Once again, it was the night when he and Hooker had hit upon the Chinaman's secret. He saw the moonlit trees, the little fire burning, and the black figures of the three Chinamen, silvered on one side by moonlight and on the other glowing from the firelight, and heard them talking together in pidgin English, for they came from different provinces. Hooker had caught the drift of their talk first and had motioned to him to listen. Fragments of the conversation were inaudible and fragments incomprehensible. A Spanish galleon from the Philippines hopelessly aground, and its treasure buried against the day of return, lay in the background of the story. A shipwrecked crew, thinned by disease, a quarrel or so, and the needs of discipline, and at last, taking to their boats never to be heard of again. Then, Chang He, only a year since, wandering ashore, had happened upon the ingots hidden for 200 years, had deserted his junk, and rebreed them with infinite toil, single handed but very safe. He laid great stress on the safety. It was a secret of his. Now he wanted help to return and exhume them. Presently, the little map fluttered and the voices sang. A fine story for two stranded British wastrels to hear. Evan's dream shifted to the moment when he had Chang He's pigtail in his hand. The life of a Chinaman is scarcely sacred like a European's. The cunning little face of Chang He, first keen and furious like a startled snake, and then fearful, treacherous, and pitiful, became overwhelmingly prominent in the dream. At the end, Chang He had grinned a most incomprehensible and startling grin. Abruptly, things became very unpleasant, as they will do at times in dreams. Chang He gibbered and threatened him. He saw in his dream heaps and heaps of gold, and Chang He intervening and struggling to hold him back from it. He took Chang He by the pigtail, how big the yellow brute was, and how he struggled and grinned. He kept growing bigger too. Then the bright heaps of gold turned to a roaring furnace, and a vast devil, surprisingly like Chang He, but with a huge black tail, began to feed him with coals. They burnt his mouth horribly. Another devil was shouting his name. Evans! Evans, you sleepy fool! Or was it Hooker? He woke up. They were in the mouth of the lagoon. There are the three palm trees. It must be in a line with that clump of bushes, said his companion. Mark that. If we go to those bushes and then strike into the bush in a straight line from here, we shall come to it when we come to the stream. They could see now where the mouth of the stream opened out. At the sight of it, Evans revived. Hurry up, man, he said, or by heaven, I shall have to drink sea water. He gnawed his hand and stared at the gleam of silver among the rocks and green tangle. Presently, he turned almost fiercely upon Hooker. Give me the paddle, he said. So they reached the river mouth. A little way up, Hooker took some water in the hollow of his hand, tasted it, and spat it out. A little further, he tried again. This will do, he said, and they began drinking eagerly. Curse this, said Evan suddenly. It's too slow. And leaning dangerously over the forepart of the canoe, he began to suck up the water with his lips. Presently, they made an end of drinking and, running the canoe into a little creek, were about to land among the thick growth that overhung the water. We shall have to scramble through this to the beach to find our bushes and get the line to the place, said Evans. We had better paddle round, said Hooker. So they pushed out again into the river and paddled back down it to the sea and along the shore to the place where the clump of bushes grew. Here they landed, pulled the light canoe far up the beach, and then went up towards the edge of the jungle until they could see the opening of the reef and the bushes in a straight line. Evans had taken a native implement out of the canoe. It was L-shaped, and the transverse piece was armed with polished stone. Hooker carried the paddle. It is straight now in this direction, said he. We must push through this till we strike the stream. Then we must prospect. They pushed through a close tangle of reeds, broad fronds, and young trees, and at first it was toilsome going, but very speedily the trees became larger, and the ground beneath them opened out. The blaze of the sunlight was replaced by insensible degrees by cool shadow. The trees became at last vast pillars that rose up to a canopy of greenery far overhead. Dim white flowers hung from their stems, and ropey creepers swung from tree to tree. The shadow deepened. On the ground, blotched fungi and a red-brown incrustation became frequent. Evans shivered. It seems almost cold here after the blaze outside. I hope we are keeping to the straight, said Hooker. Presently they saw, far ahead, a gap in the somber darkness where white shafts of hot sunlight smote into the forest. There also was brilliant green undergrowth and colored flowers. Then they heard the rush of water. Here is the river. We should be close to it now, said Hooker. The vegetation was thick by the river bank. Great plants, as yet unnamed, grew among the roots of the big trees and spread rosettes of huge green fans towards the strip of sky. Many flowers and a creeper with shiny foliage clung to the exposed stems. On the water of the broad, quiet pool which the treasure seekers now overlooked, there floated big oval leaves and a waxen, pinkish white flower not unlike a water lily. Further, as the river bent away from them, the water suddenly frothed and became noisy in a rapid. Well, said Evans, we have swerved a little from the straight, said Hooker. That was to be expected.